This is apropos. The European Commission is rejecting an assertion by Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg that EU data laws censor social media, saying the legislation only requires large platforms to remove illegal content. The company announced this week that it's scrapping its fact-checking service in the US in favour of user-generated community notes similar to those found on Elon Musk's X. Zuckerberg added that he would work with Donald Trump to push back on censorship around the world. Morgan Eyre has more.
The EU absolutely refutes claims of censorship. That's according to a spokesperson for the European Commission. Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of social media giant Meta, accused the bloc of passing laws which institutionalise a suppression of free speech. He made the comments during a video message announcing the company would get rid of independent fact-checkers in the United States. Meta said the decision was to make freedom of expression a priority. The EU says it does that.
We don't ask any platform to remove any lawful content. We just need to make the difference between illegal content and then content that is potentially harmful. This is an in-between category, harmful for minors, harmful for our democracies. There we ask just platforms to take appropriate risk mitigation measures.
Meta has sent a risk assessment report to the bloc on how the changes to its fact-checking system would work if they were to be introduced in Europe. Such research is required under EU law.
Working with such independent fact-checkers can be considered as an effective way to mitigate systemic risks stemming from very large online platform services. For example, risks relating to disinformation, risks relating to electoral processes or civic discourse.
The tech giant plans to replace its fact-checkers with a community notes system. Users will moderate content themselves, but some experts warn this will remove safeguards.
Meta, by doing this, are retreating from fact. They're retreating from truth. And by switching to a community notes model, they're effectively trying to catch a tidal wave in a bucket, and it's not going to work.
The changes highlight the different regulatory approaches to social media companies around the world and the role these companies play when it comes to moderating and policing content.
To discuss the implications of the Meta move, we're joined now by Henry Peck. He's a campaigner on digital threats at NGO Global Witness. Thanks so much for being on the programme with us this evening. Firstly, your NGO says this decision by Meta will make it more dangerous for women and for minorities to speak out online. What are your specific concerns?
We're concerned that by essentially outsourcing its content moderation responsibilities to users, Meta in the US is allowing for a far greater degree of harmful content to be asserted against women, against people of colour, against scientists, climate activists, immigrants, people who already are disproportionately targeted with harassment and abuse online. And in this move, it's essentially washing its hands of a responsibility that all social media platforms have, which is to preserve a level of trust and safety and robust content moderation to make sure that there is a space in which people can participate inclusively and can have constructive, warm and positive discussions. Instead, we're worried that what this move is signalling is a real backsliding, a race to the bottom following X, in which the platform experience will degrade and decline. And this has serious implications for our spaces for civic discourse, as well as our democracies themselves.
And what kind of implications are you foreseeing then? We had a Nobel Peace Prize winner earlier also warning that this decision means that extremely dangerous times lie ahead for journalism, for democracy and for social media users right across the board. What implications do you see, Henry?
Well, Meta is no stranger to online harms becoming real offline dangers. We've seen it take some responsibility for the impact its platforms had on the genocide in Myanmar, also ethnic violence in Ethiopia, and plenty of cases of teenage self-harm and suicide that have related to its platforms. So we're worried that this could presage a new era of genocidal violence elsewhere, of serious individual harm and injury, and the targeting of users in a really vile way that leads to more deaths and violence.
And given those concerns that have already existed when it comes to Facebook and Instagram also for several years now, how effective have fact checkers actually been about monitoring what is being put onto these sites?
Sure. Well, at Global Witness, we've been studying the abilities of these platforms to properly moderate content for 4 years now, and have found many shortcomings and issues with their current systems. But by abandoning systems that have taken huge amounts of labor and work and resources, and instead sort of outsourcing them to users, this isn't a signal for an improved refining process. Instead, Meta has the resources, based on its huge revenues, to properly invest in content moderation, training and funding content moderators who, by their very nature, are independent, whereas users, there's the possibility for the weaponization of bias over the long term, and providing adequate psychological support as well. Some of the material that comes up is really extreme and requires treating safely, whereas users may not be prepared for the same encounters. And then, of course, there's also the possibility for falsehoods and lies to spread, which, as Facebook and Meta's algorithms are designed to boost sensational content, this could become an even greater risk going forward.
Yeah, because, Henry, already back in August, your NGO had been criticising Meta for its decision to close its transparency tool, CrowdTangle, saying that had been a very useful method to help understand how misinformation and how disinformation are being circulated. So do you think that this latest decision by Meta, it's part of a wider pattern of restricting access?
Yes, that was a huge, the closure of CrowdTangle was a huge disappointment and backstep for transparency, access to information, for journalistic investigations around what was actually taking place on Meta's platform, something that is clearly in the public interest. So we see this as yet another backstep in terms of Meta's commitment to public safety, to a positive user experience on its platforms, and also fear that by signaling this move as the incoming Trump administration prepares to take office, it also has implications for how Meta may respond to pressure from governments elsewhere and in parts of the world where there are not community notes teams or users accustomed to doing so, but instead more authoritarian governments that may instead put more pressure on Meta to cave to their will.
Yeah, because we saw Mark Zuckerberg as part of his announcement saying that he planned to work with Donald Trump to push back against what he described as foreign governments going after American companies to censor more. What do you think he was trying to get at there?
I think it was a blatant attempt to cozy up to the Trump administration, having previously been threatened by Trump with being imprisoned for life, and having previously banned Trump on his platform 4 years ago. I think he does swing whichever way the political winds are blowing, and it was a cold business decision, and that there wasn't so much principle in it as political convenience.
And does it suggest to you that other businesses are going to do likewise to, in effect, shift their priorities to adapt to the incoming administration?
Yes, it doesn't presage well for other companies reacting to the incoming administration and cozying up themselves. We are already obviously seen X and Elon Musk go all in with Trump's campaign and found it's been effective for them. And we're seeing this as a risk for other big tech companies as well.
And Henry, some free speech groups have actually welcomed this decision by Meta, saying that users actually want social media platforms that don't suppress political content. So what would your response be to that?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said for allowing for robust, healthy political debates on social media. And as we've found, the processes for moderating harmful content are imperfect. But there are ways that they can improve them without throwing out this system that they've built up over years, using independent fact checkers who are professionals, trained trust and safety staff, content moderators, and instead they're essentially opening the sluice gates to a much worse user experience. X's experience has declined substantially since its takeover and become a cesspool of hate. So I think there's a concern that Meta's platforms will come to look more like that, and actually the user experience will be diminished.
Okay, Henry, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme this evening. That is Henry Peck. He's a campaigner on digital threats at the NGO Global Witness. Well, that is it from us for now.